Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this Inside the Americas. Coming up in today's show, there are just 6 weeks to go in the all-important Iowa caucuses in the U.S. presidential race. On the way, a look at the narrowing Republican field, where just 4 candidates are still standing, far behind former President Donald Trump. Then, one of the most brazen and long-running betrayals in the history of the U.S. Foreign Service. A former American ambassador charged with spying for Cuba for the past 40 years. And as the COP28 climate talks continue in Dubai, we'll look at the devastating effect global warming is having on America's most mythic river, the Mississippi. I'm Jeannie Godula. This week, the race to the White House turned up a notch with a new Republican debate. But once again, GOP frontrunner and former President Donald Trump decided not to attend. Just 4 other Republican candidates are left standing in the run-up to the presidential election next year, as Charlie James explains.
They're the last candidates standing who aren't named Donald Trump. Fighting for the Republican Party's 2024 nomination, these 4 face growing pressure to generate momentum for their campaigns. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis was once viewed as Trump's main competition.
Hello, Iowa!
But his star faded fast. The 44-year-old is a former Navy officer and is known as one of the most conservative governors in the U.S. He's backed laws that restrict abortion, loosen gun restrictions, and limit immigration.
Nobody has a right to immigrate to this country, no foreigner. We determine as Americans what type of immigration system benefits our country.
But DeSantis has failed to connect with voters, and his campaign is suffering from a lack of funds. Former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley is considered a moderate Republican. While only polling around 10%, she is riding a mini wave of momentum and has attracted several billionaire donors. Haley's the daughter of Indian immigrants and was the first female and minority governor of South Carolina. She also served in the Trump administration as United Nations ambassador, but now says it's time for a new generation of leaders.
I have always had a deep belief in America, but I know America is better than all the division and distractions that we have today.
Biotech entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy is a political newcomer known for fiery and aggressive rhetoric.
This establishment in the Republican Party has lost its mind. I'm sick and tired of it.
The 38-year-old Indian American founded a pharmaceutical company that made him one of the youngest billionaires in the country. Other candidates have attacked his lack of political experience, and he is polling around 5% nationally. And finally, there's former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. The lowest polling candidate, he is a former prosecutor and was once an advisor to Donald Trump. Christie has now positioned himself as a leading critic of the former president.
Why am I running for President of the United States? I'm running because he's let us down.
Despite refusing to participate in any of the debates so far, Trump continues to dominate the race for the Republican nomination. Nearly 6 in 10 Republican voters support him. This despite the fact that Trump faces 4 pending criminal trials, charged with crimes including fraud, mishandling classified documents, and election interference.
Next to one of the longest-running spy stories in U.S. history. A former lifelong diplomat and U.S. ambassador has been charged with spying for Cuba, and this for the past 4 decades. Lisa Kamenov explains.
The U.S. Justice Minister calls it one of the longest-lasting infiltrations of the U.S. government by a foreign agent. Victor Manuel Rocha, a former U.S. diplomat, had been spying on the U.S. for Cuba for over 40 years. The 73-year-old was arrested in Miami on Friday and taken to federal court on Monday. Prosecutors say the case relies heavily on information which Rocha himself admitted to an undercover FBI agent who was tracking him inside the Cuban intelligence service.
Rocha repeatedly referred to the United States as, quote, the enemy. During the undercover, he told the undercover that his efforts to infiltrate the United States government were, quote, meticulous and, quote, very disciplined. And he repeatedly bragged about the significance of his efforts, saying that, quote, what has been done has strengthened the revolution immensely.
Russia's 20-year career with the U.S. Foreign Service took him to Cuba, Argentina and Bolivia, where he served as a U.S. ambassador from 2000 to 2002. He was also on the White House's National Security Council and an advisor to the commander of the U.S. military Southern Command from 2006 to 2012. Manuel Rocha faces at least 3 criminal counts: conspiracy to act as a foreign agent to defraud the U.S., acting as an illegal agent for a foreign government, and using a passport obtained by false statement. The U.S. government says additional charges may come as the investigation continues.
Also this week, world leaders and climate activists are in Dubai for the COP28 climate talks. But former U.S. Vice President Al Gore, a Nobel Prize-winning climate activist himself, has slammed both the event and its president. That's Sultan Al Jaber, who is also president of the national oil company of the host nation, United Arab Emirates. Here's more of what Al Gore had to say.
The oil and gas industry made a mistake in overreaching and naming the CEO of one of the largest and one of the dirtiest, by many measures, oil companies in the world as the president of the COP. I think that surprised people and offended some people because it wasn't respectful of what the world needs in the way of confidence that nations are actually working in good faith to try to solve this instead of bending to the will of the fossil fuel companies.
Al Gore is well placed to make those claims as he just released a massive update of the Climate Trace database he helped create that tracks carbon pollution from every nation and city around the world. Well, all of that comes as November set a new monthly record for heat, a record that's been broken every month since June. And with just December left to go, 2023 is on track to smashing the record for the hottest year in history. Global warming is having devastating consequences around the world, and we'll focus now on the situation at America's biggest river, the Mississippi. Franck Genazo and Thomas Donzel report.
It's a mythical river whose waters flow through the veins of America. A national treasure and a major trade route. But the Mississippi River is in crisis, grappling with ever-receding water levels. Before, you needed a boat to cross the river. Now in some parts, all you need are waterproof shoes.
That should be more than waist high, probably chest high ordinarily.
Perry Whitaker has been coming here since he was a teenager. He says he's never seen the river like this.
Ordinarily, we would be able to walk out to this rock maybe once every 10 years. The water level will get that low, but yeah, this is 2 years in a row when it's been this low.
75% of the state of Missouri is currently experiencing a drought. It's already having an economic impact on these barges that transports grain, coal and oil every day.
Most of the barges that are coming by here are like less than half capacity. The barges kind of follow each other instead of passing and crossing each other. It slows down how much cargo those barges can carry, and time is money.
In 2022, the crisis cost Mississippi an estimated 20 billion euros. The river stretches for almost 4,000 kilometers and crosses 10 states. Louisiana has been the worst hit by the crisis.
Saltwater is creeping up the Mississippi River from the Gulf, and that can have a huge impact on the drinking water supply.
The governor of Louisiana is now asking for a federal emergency declaration over a threat to the region's water supply.
The river is no longer strong enough to hold back the sea's onslaught. Salt is relentlessly spreading up the Mississippi River, infiltrating the water needed for irrigation and rendering drinking water unfit for human consumption.
Smell it.
Just weeks ago, President Joe Biden declared a state of emergency, launching a massive logistical operation led by the US Army on the river. Millions of liters of water were extracted and transported in huge barges.
We're actually going upriver about 22 miles from where we are right now, and we're filling these with river water from 22 miles up that does not have the salinity and the chloride levels in it that we are currently see down here.
The equivalent of 100 million 1-litre bottles were removed in just a few weeks. To avoid repeating the same process again soon after, the Army embarked on another feat with the help of this massive barge.
We were worried initially that the salt water was going to go further up and impact more of the water intakes all the way up into New Orleans. We constructed the augmented sill, which has helped block the salt water from going up further.
An underwater barrier was erected to counter the infiltration of water. It's proved effective, but this researcher says more needs to be done to limit the spread once and for all.
It's the drought in the region, it's the deepened channel for navigation, and it's sea level rise and climate change. When sea level rise itself is moving up on its own, that's again pushes more salt water up the river, which means we need more fresh water to keep it back where it used to be.
Authorities have acknowledged that sea levels are unusually low for this time of year, but some are still in denial over what exactly is causing the crisis.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Man did not cause the drought. I mean, that's Mother Nature. I mean, in this area, we have El Nino and La Nina and all of that. Those are that's weather patterns. That's something that man can't control.
Scientists disagree. In spite of this, local authorities are insistent that they will not reduce human activity on the Mississippi. Nothing looks set to be done for the river, which supplies 40% of the U.S. with drinking water.
A lighter note for you now, and Taylor Swift has just been named Time Magazine's Person of the Year. The American pop star saw a year filled with a record-breaking world tour, the ability to move economies, and a $1.1 billion net worth. The editors at Time calling the 33-year-old Swift one of the most influential women on the planet and the hero of her own story. And we'll leave you now with another musical note, this time a bit of record-breaking holiday cheer. 78-year-old Brenda Lee has become the oldest person to top the U.S. singles chart, beating the previous record held by Louis Armstrong since 1964. And while you might not know her name, chances are good you do know her song, Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree. That perennial holiday favorite reached #1 65 years after it was first released in 1958 when Lee was just 13 years old. We'll leave you with that. Happy holidays to you if you celebrate it, and see you soon for a new Inside the Americas.
When you hear